Hi, everyone. Good evening. Come on in, get settled in. Welcome to Political Fixer Live. Come on in. We've got a little bit of a different show this evening. We're going to be looking at a couple of different things this evening that we were not expecting. So, as everyone's coming in and getting settled in, then welcome to Political Fixer Live. We're going to go ahead and take a quick look at some voter returns really fast and see if we're going to be talking about that. Last time I checked, it was not close, but we'll keep an eye out. But while everybody's getting settled in, I want to ask everyone how their day was. And then also ask you if you've got something on your mind. It could be political or not political. We're going to try something a little bit different this evening and talk about some things. Good evening to everyone. Hi. I see Kathy, you just got the #1 viewer badge. I have no idea what that means, but congratulations. And also, I'm thinking about you. I know you're going through some things as well. So I wanted to let you know that you were in my thoughts a lot today. Kelly F., good to see you here. We've got some interesting things happening right now in the news. I will tell you, you might already notice my Dolly Parton shirt. There's going to be a couple of other things that we're going to talk about. The news of the passing of Dolly Parton surprised me and put me in a place of grief that I was not expecting. Hi, TH Fannin. Hi, Kelly F. Yes, a sad day. And so I thought we could talk about a few different things. And most of the show we are going to talk about some of the news headlines. I think there's a couple of things that definitely are flying under the radar and a couple of things where we're missing the plot, so to speak. DK, I see you. Squarefoot Gardening, welcome. Come on in, everybody, to Political Fixer Live. I see the little broken hearts. We haven't really talked about how we need to prepare mentally and emotionally for what's about to be ahead. And I want to be honest with you, I don't think we've really talked about how to deal with what's already happening and what's passed us by. We've just kind of barreled from crisis to crisis and controversy to controversy. And I was kind of trying to process everything today. And I realized that when you're an activist or an advocate, or when you're someone who cares, and forgive me, the Florida heat is definitely doing a number on our air conditioning. So as I do the Southern wipe my brow thing, I think that when you're an activist or an advocate, then there's this instantaneous need to respond. So we get upset about something in Congress and we say, okay, we'll do something. Call your congressperson. Something big happens, we start organizing. Even when something exciting happens, like a new candidate is running that we're excited about, we're like, oh, volunteer, vote, send money. Instantaneously, there's a group of us that are told that we need to respond and react very quickly. And I think more to the point, and I don't know if you all feel this as well, but almost like if you don't do that, then it's irresponsible, right? That if you do not immediately act, that you're part of the problem. And I understand where that comes from. And I love that so many of you give so much of your time. I know that so many of you do so much as volunteers and advocates and community organizers and helping in your households and your neighborhoods. All of that is great. But what happens is we don't leave time for ourselves to just stop and process and feel. Hi, all things, good to see you, right? Thank you, Hoosier Mama. So tonight I want to talk about a little bit of the emotional warfare, and it's tied to the headlines and how we can be there for each other and how we can be there for ourselves. I love what Squarefoot Gardening is saying. You cannot pour water from an empty cup. And as a gardener, you should know. Kelly F., I wonder what the catalyst will be for everyone to revolt. All things says people have to remember it's a privilege to do some of these things. Agree. Hi, Miss Centrist. So good to see you this evening. Yeah, so come on in. Welcome to Political Fixer Live. So we are going to talk a little bit about the Dolly Parton situation and some other headlines, but we're going to do it from a little bit of a different lens, which is giving ourselves time and space to prepare. This is a different type of organizing. We're going to talk about the mental and emotional strain that we're all about to be in for, and I think there's some new headlines that actually point to things being a little bit more difficult. I'm so glad to have you here, Counselor Cat Mom. And yes, Cynthia, it is a very sad day. And I felt it as well. If I'm being really honest, I was already put in an unusual position of grief I lost my father over 4 years ago, and this weekend, very unexpectedly, I was confronted with some of that grief kind of out of nowhere. I know some of you have been going through different grief and fear as well for different reasons. But even if you don't have anything like that personally happening, what we're taking on is just an enormous onslaught of negative emotion all the time. And because you guys are so responsible and so involved, you take in more than the average bear. You read more news, you understand the depths of some of the impact of some of this awful decision making, some of the awful legislation, right? So sorry to hear that some of you are like TH, that your school year has gotten off to a rough start. True Blue, so good to see you. So we've got some new information this evening, and I want to talk about it. Bear with me here. But what do Hakeem Jeffries, Russia, and Dolly Parton all have in common? If I have to pick a theme, that's it. It's a loosely based theme. We had to kind of adjust some things. But bear with me, folks. All right. So let's start with a headline that some of you may have heard. We're then going to go into a headline that some of you may not have heard, and then we're going to show how it all ties together, and we're going to leave space for a lot more discussion tonight. We've all got a lot of feelings to process. So let me start at the beginning with where my mind went kind of processing for tonight's show, because I was looking forward to seeing all of you as well. Hello, Jonan Wild. And Square Foot Guardian says, I'm learning that no is a complete sentence. I love that self-care, by the way. Love that. Okay, so here's where my mind went. I wanted to know, we didn't talk about this much in June. It kind of quietly came and went because I'm sure there were other catastrophes we were talking about. But it's been 10 years since 47 came down that escalator and led off with some really, at the time, shocking and nasty things that were said, particularly about immigrants, but that wasn't the only thing. That has been 10 years as of June. So one thing I wanted to know is, if you're in a marriage that ends in divorce, what is the average lifespan of that relationship that does not work out? And I found it in the United States. If a marriage ends in divorce, and no judgment at all, that span is 8.2 years. That is the average lifespan of a marriage that is not ultimately, at the end of the day, where the two people decided they belonged. We have been trapped in an emotionally abusive relationship for 10 years, right? That is a really huge number to think about, right? We can't escape it. He's always in the news. We're always on edge. He's saying things that even if we don't want to react or respond, you kind of gotta, or else you lose your humanity. And even if you want to turn it off, even if you're saying, you know what, I don't really want to do politics today, I just want to turn off the news, there are glimpses of it everywhere. In the power bill, at the gas pump, in are these groceries safe to eat, in filling out the forms and dealing with everything if you have kids in school, in the medical access and care we have, like everywhere, it's all around us, this toxicity. And we don't really have a way to deal with it. We just kind of bounce from action to action to action, right? Carrie, thank you so much. That was very kind of you. It is exhausting, Special K. I completely agree. Hello, Professor Liberty Esquire, right? Yeah. And then there's also the constant, it's not just him, right? There's other things to infuriate us. Like, I'm seeing some of you got the news that Darlene Graham, who doesn't understand what Taiwan is, that she just won her primary for U.S. Senate. Now, to be clear, I think South Carolina is in play. I think Annie Andrews is a great candidate, but it's still depressing when you see tens of thousands of people showing up to vote for someone like that. It gets discouraging, I guess is the point, right? So it gets really easy for us to look for a place to channel that emotion, including rage, at least for me. And I found myself channeling some of that rage when I saw Hakeem Jeffries met with Jared Kushner. Now, if you are new to politics, don't worry, we're going to go politics light tonight, but this all kind of ties together. Hakeem Jeffries is the minority leader of the House, the Democratic leader of the House in Congress. And he met with Jared Kushner, whose official title is White House advisor, but he's really just, 47's son-in-law. And more than that, he's one of the gross, unicorn blood drinking people that he has on his staff to do the grossest of gross things for him. He is basically on hand to do whatever nasty things need to be done with whatever country is involved or whatever payoff, bribe, etc. So to have someone who is not in a formal position in the White House at all, he's known as an advisor, but I double checked this. He doesn't receive a taxpayer salary because he doesn't want to go through that scrutiny or have congressional oversight. He doesn't have a real job or title. He has no real authority over anything. And yet Hakeem Jeffries met with him supposedly about affordability, right? And all things, the whole point, first of all, welcome, is you can offer whatever perspective you would like, as long as it's not mean, more than welcome. Please share your perspective, right? So I want to hear all things perspective. I want to hear all of your things perspective. And what I'll say is this. In the first part of my day, I actually recorded a TikTok about this, and I ended up scrapping it after I learned about the passing of Dolly Parton because it felt inappropriate. But I will share with you some thoughts that I have on this on a bigger picture, but I welcome your thoughts. I'm really having to lean in on my mental health, on the idea of there are such things as tomorrow problems. Another way to say that is two things can be true. The meeting was foolish for him to take, and whatever they discussed, and I don't think it was anything nefarious. I think Hakeem Jeffries fell for one of the oldest tricks in the book, right? Because the meeting was leaked. It made him look weak. And all of us spent all this time piling on to him, either literally or emotionally, right? And he is not objectively a good communicator when it comes to these complex issues. It can come across as extremely patronizing, in my opinion, when he talks to us about these things. So I don't think he handled it well. And I don't know if he is the strongest choice for leader. It's not my decision. And we don't know because he's never actually been the majority leader, right? That can all be true. And it can also be a tomorrow problem because it doesn't matter right now. He is not the majority leader. We have no ability to get him out of office right now. It's not a realistic expectation. And we have to stay focused on the midterms. And so I realized that I'm spending a lot of energy upset about things I cannot change, right? Phoebe is saying I was already totally done with him. Marlene is like me +1. He's not going anywhere because he's an excellent fundraiser is a great point, all things. And the party needs money. And again, this is a big tent party. I'm not ever going to agree with everyone in the party, just like I know there are a lot of people that might not be as progressive as I am on certain issues. There might be people that are not as conservative as I am on certain issues, or whatever the lens is. We all have our blind spots. It is a big tent party, but I bring it up because, first of all, I know it was on some of your minds. I've been reading some of your feeds as well. But also as like a healthy way for us to discuss it. Because unless or until we get a majority in the House, then it's irrelevant. He is the candidate. We need to get out the people who are actively trying to harm us. So here's how I would put it. Right now, I feel like we have these two groups of people, our two lovely parties. You have MAGA, who's essentially hijacked the Republican Party. And then you have Democrats, and Democrats now span independents and centrists, what you would have called liberal Democrats about 5 to 8 years ago, and then now more socialist, far left Democrats. So a huge spectrum, because everybody that doesn't fit into that MAGA bucket is looking for a home. And as a general rule, we want that in politics. We want to be a big tent party as long as people are being respectful to each other and they're not selling out our values, right? But all of that is a very fancy way of saying sometimes it feels to me like we have people who are setting the house on fire all the time, everywhere, constant fires. And then people who we desperately need to have put out those fires just constantly running around like crazy, running into each other like a clown show, spilling water everywhere, sometimes not understanding where the fire hose is, right? Like it feels like there's the circus on one side and then there's the arsonist on the other, right? And so right now, I have to say that yes, it's frustrating to watch the people that we need to put out the fire running into each other all of the time, like some sort of circus. And yet, the choice is the well intended, sometimes clown show, and the people lighting the fires. We have to focus on the fires, right? It does seem like a crazy game show, right? 100%. So there is a lot of division that's happening. This is true. And that brings me to my next headline. All of this was set up for what I think is the second biggest headline. I was going to say it was the biggest, but we're going to talk about Dolly in just a little bit. And welcome to all of you joining us. We're at already 13,000 likes on what is honestly a pretty tough day. It's been tough. And I think not just because of the passing of a legend and icon and all of the things, but just because there's a lot of negativity in general that we're having to deal with. And maybe this is a way for us to express some of that grief. But let me share with you what I think is the second most important headline of today that honestly didn't get nearly enough attention, in my opinion. There were reports this morning of a U.S. plane landing in Moscow. And for hours, the press could not figure out whose plane it was and who was on the plane. They knew it was a United States plane. There was no comment from the White House or the State Department. Moscow denied that the plane was there, which is crazy. And then there was a diplomatic envoy, like basically a bunch of vans and things that went from the plane to the Kremlin. So the jig was up and everybody knew that Moscow was aware that someone from the United States was there. And it was the head of our CIA. So the head of our CIA covertly flew into Moscow to take a personal meeting, presumably with the leadership of Russia. So what was the crux of that meeting? Well, first of all, we'll never know, because one of the things that they are notorious with meetings with Russia is not having not only no notes, but just being very limited on who, in as far as translators, are allowed in the room. So there's literally no record of these meetings, but also they're not really saying, they're allowing things to just kind of hang out there. So I'm going to tell you what the theories are. I know, Dana, that was my thought as well, right? So I'm going to tell you what people think it is in the press so far, and then I'm going to tell you what I think it is, but I want your opinion as well. Okay, so one of our planes landed in Moscow. The head of the CIA met with the Kremlin. There are two prevailing theories that were happening that were floating in the press. The first was that they were there to try to renegotiate a ceasefire with Ukraine. Because specifically Germany was upset because there were some drones that people thought might be Russian drones in Germany. Here's why I think that is 100% inaccurate. I think it's 100% accurate. First of all, why fly there instead of, doing anything in a meeting in a neutral location? Secondly, what are you planning on doing by sending a CIA guy there and not Marco Rubio or the State Department? Third, he doesn't care about Ukraine or Russia. It's not the top problem on his plate right now. Iran is. And fourth, they said, well, yes, but this time Germany is upset. He doesn't care who else is upset. He cares about himself. So I do not think that we sent a covert CIA liaison into the Kremlin to talk about a war that's now been going on for years that he's frankly lost interest in, right? I don't think that's it. Another theory that was out there is that they're worried about the economy together and they're talking about different things with sanctions. That is not it either. I don't think any of that is the case. I think some of you are ahead of me on this. I think they are going back to the mothership to ask them to once again help with these midterm elections. I actually think that the Jared Kushner meeting and the Russian meeting are related. I think Jared Kushner meeting with Hakeem Jeffries is related to the CIA meeting with the Kremlin. Hear me out. Okay, I know this sounds a little conspiracy theorish, but I do believe this. So just let me lay out my cards. And then, yes, I will welcome any criticisms or other ideas. All right. Russia did actively interfere in our elections. Now, what I mean by that is not that they hacked anything, not that the results were not accurate, but they had a lot of disinformation campaigns, a lot of kind of half information leaks. This went all the way back to when Hillary Clinton was running, and they were actively sowing discord in the United States as well as misinformation. They had a lot of access and help from Facebook, candidly, because Facebook was giving them a lot of our information. Now, if you're not familiar with how this worked, this is not conspiracy theory. There were actual documents that later established this, but I happen to be a tech nerd. So I'm going to explain a little bit about how this worked, okay? And not get techie, don't worry, but I want to show you how this Russian interference campaign worked so you can be prepared for it in the future, all right? Bot farms is another thing, Joan and Wild, that's 100%, right? Okay, so let's pretend that you were on Facebook 10 years ago and you see a quiz that you take. Do you guys remember all these quizzes were everywhere? They were in BuzzFeed, they were in your Facebook feed, they were everywhere. And it says something like, which Disney villain do you most identify with, right? That seems harmless. So your friend sends it to you and they're like, haha, I'm Ursula, you should take it, right? And you take this quiz and it tells you that you are Gaston from Beauty and the Beast, okay? And so Facebook gave that information to a firm that was working on this disinformation campaign. Now, what does that tell the firm? It gives them little bits of information about your personality. And so they were using all of these quizzes to try to understand who you are as a person. How do you react when you get stressed? How do you react when you get sad? So that they knew how to psychologically best manipulate you. And then it went one step further. Facebook was also giving them data about where you went next, because Facebook could track, at the time, some of that has changed, Facebook could track which websites you went to next, and they could sell that data. So let's say that after you filled out that quiz, you went and you looked at how to sell your car. You went to a website that had job postings. Well, now they know your profile is more like Gaston. You get angry about things you don't understand. And they know that likely you're out of a job or at least hurting for money. So you know what ad would work really great on you? An ad about immigrants taking your job, right? They can put that right there. They know it works really well. And before you know it, you are being psychologically manipulated. It sounds really complicated, but it's really easy. They figured out what makes us work as people, how we tick emotionally, and what we're worried about. And all of us are worried about something. And then they used that to pit groups against each other. Does that make sense? So that's essentially how Russia, along with Cambridge Analytica and others, worked on 2016 election forward to try to manipulate us, right? And you're right, there's other messaging that's still going on. And JRobot is right that they're not as strong as that as they used to be for a lot of different reasons. But that doesn't mean they're not going to keep trying. So what are we seeing? We're going to start with the bad news first. And then you guys know me. We're going to go to the good news. I promise. It's a tough day, but there is a little bit of a rainbow here. All right. So what does this tell us? I believe that the CI was there off asking for help and basically bargaining. I think they went there to deliver messages and to ask for help and basically say, hey, you need him to have the power he does. You need for our Congress to stay MAGA, because if not, then bad things are going to happen to you. A new Congress is going to fund Ukraine. A new Congress is going to be looking at the books closer. A new Congress is going to reenact those sanctions and start seizing more assets of many of your people that are still here in the United States. They are basically saying it is in your best interest, Russia, for you to help us the way that you can. Okay. Why do I think that's related to Cambridge Analytica? Exactly, Miss Interest, right? So here's what I think this is related to. Why do I think it's related to Hakeem Jeffries? Do I think he went there negotiating in that way? No. I think Jared probably called this meeting. I think that Hakeem Jeffries got tricked. I think he probably convinced him on something. He's like, no one will know, but I really need to talk to you about this and blah, blah, blah. And then Hakeem Jeffries is like, okay. And then it was a bait and switch. And really, what Jared Kushner was doing was taking the temperature. Hakeem Jeffries has notoriously stood in front of God and America and said that he's not interested in impeachment. But we also know that he is a strategist. And so he was probably taking his temperature on, are you thinking about impeachment? Where's your party at on this? Who else do you think you might be looking into? Like basically kind of getting an assessment of how much trouble they're in. And who knows what Jeffries answered? Who knows if he played it cool or not? Who knows if he's actually in control or not, right? Not trying to throw him completely under the bus, but move to the part they don't want you to focus on. Look at the other hand of the magician, so to speak. Why call the meeting at all? Because they feel weak. They feel like they're losing, that there is a good chance, even with the mail-in voting nonsense and even with all of their bluster and all of the we're going to send ICE to the polls, all of that nonsense, they know they're losing. Notoriously, prediction markets tend to skew more conservative, partly because of who places the bets and the places their money in these prediction markets. And yet, I checked the Kalshi market today, and would any of you like to guess, no fair cheating, would any of you like to guess what percentage the market is at, Republicans versus Democrats, on who the market thinks will win the House? We're not talking about Senate yet, just the House. What do you think the prediction markets are saying, Republican or Democrat? Do you think the Democrats are more projected to win, the Republicans are more projected to win, and by how much? I would love to know. Okay, so you guys are saying Dems. You have a number? Do you want to guess a number? Because I have the number from right before I went on the air. I see all of these Dems. Okay, good. So you're optimistic as well. I like seeing that after the day that we've had, family, right? 55% by 15 points. No clue. 60 by 80. Okay. And welcome to those of you just joining us on Political Fixer Live. The question that we're posing is, without peeking, what do you think the prediction markets, which tend to skew conservative, what do you think they are predicting on who will control the House of Congress, the Congressional House, Republicans or Democrats, and by how much? TH Fan is saying Dems by 5%. Good to see you. 51 GOP, right? Okay. So I will tell you, the markets are at 84% Democrats. 84%. Now, I want to be clear. It's not a poll. That doesn't mean that they think the Democrats will win by that much. That's not what that means. What it means is that out of all of the bets that are placed in that marketplace, 84% of them, of those dollars, say that the Democrats are going to take over the House. Right. Jim Cook had my response as well, right? All things, I do think you won. I think you won by Price is Right rules because you had the closest without going over, right? Okay, so why do I use those numbers? Because the markets are not experts, far from it. These are honestly a lot of times the same people that are betting on March Madness and whatever, and whatever. We all have, I could go on and on about my thoughts and complexities on prediction markets. I will say that Kalshi is at least regulated and all of the things aside from Polymarket, but that's another discussion for another time. The point is, I'm not saying the data is magic. I'm saying the reason I use it as a data point is because this is people's money. Think about it. They're putting a dollar thinking this is what I believe will happen. So I don't think that it's data as in a poll. I think it's a data point on where we are mentally as a country. I think it's almost a vibe check. If I was going to call it anything, I would call it a vibe check. And right now, with everything that they're trying to throw at us, the markets are still saying there is that at 84%, the markets are predicting that the Dems will take over the House and Congress. Senate, it goes back and forth. It's pretty close, and depending on the day, they have Democrats ahead, Republicans ahead, and it changes dramatically with different polling information and different news cycles and things like that. I actually do think we have a strong chance of winning the Senate, but we don't have to do that. It would be great. It would be great if we could, but we only need one door to close and lock so that we can contain the crazy. That's all we need. We just need one door to close and lock, and then we can contain the crazy. Now, if we see all of this, if the markets are seeing all of this, if the polls are starting to see all of this, if the sentiment and his polls are in the garbage can right now, if they're seeing that, then you bet that people whose necks are on the line are seeing that. Some of them are worried about criminal investigations. Some of them are worried that their money is going to dry up if people start looking. Some of them are worried that whatever deals they have with other countries, they're not going to be able to deliver if there's actual congressional oversight and we start actually following the rules, right? They are worried about their own necks. So much so that they are extending themselves to a meeting with the other side, with the woke side, right? Like we are hitting Jeffries pretty hard here, but the fact that Kushner took the meeting is actually a big sign of weakness for him. It means that he is worried. He just blinked first, right? Because Kushner has no power. Kushner has no role. The only reason he would be meeting with Jeffries is in no official capacity. It would be because he's scared. Same thing with the CIA. Hate the fact that they flew into the Kremlin. Hate the fact that we have that relationship with Russia right now when these people are awful. So that's true. And yet, going back to our whole mental health balancing, let's look at the bright side. They wouldn't have gone there if they weren't scared, right? Okay, Blanca Falcon, good to see you. I agree, J Robot. I don't like the optics either, but I'm choosing to be zen about it because, again, people being competent Democrats is tomorrow's problem. That's our theme for tonight, right? Emerald's Bloom, isn't Hakeem friends with Jared's father? Yes, that is what I have heard. Kushner isn't in the admin. Do I think that he's giving him strategy is what Jemmy wants to know. I don't know who is calling what strategy right now. If the news headlines are to be believed, 47 is worried about nap time and snack time with Natalie, and we've got other people that are running the Oval Office. So who decided this was all a good idea? Who knows? Who knows? Any of the cabal of crazy could have decided this was a good idea. But it was a risk. They had to have known the plane would have gotten discovered. And now they're left bargaining with Russia. I think it's a position of weakness. Now, what can you do about it? These are big things we're talking about. Secret meetings, flights to the Kremlin. Like, these are really big things. So what can you do about it? So the first thing is regulate. Decide where you're going to spend your anger and your exhaustion, because this is going to turn into a sprint. I told you guys months ago, this is a marathon, not a sprint. We're weeks out, people. It's now a sprint. It's about to get so much more intense. So taking care of yourself, it's okay to not react to everything. It really, really is. So that's the first thing. And that's for your own mental health. But secondly, what can you do? Prepare for what we know is coming. There are certain playbooks that Russia is not going to be able to run again. One of those playbooks is the gathering all of our data and dividing us up on Facebook. Facebook's power is completely waning. They are not a primary source for news anymore. They are not even in the top 3 or 4 locations where people go for their social media anymore. Meta is completely struggling financially. I do think that there is going to be social media manipulation, but I don't think it will be nearly as sophisticated or concentrated as it was 10 years ago. But you know what still works is the division and distraction. That's the bad news. It still works. The good news is we get to control it. Again, we can say something's a problem, but we get to say it's tomorrow's problem. We can say we disagree with someone and still say, yes, but they might be a clown, but at least they're not an arsonist. That's okay too, right? This is what I'm suggesting. I know that the problems and the divisions are extremely real. I know that how we disagree, if you take independent, centrist, and conservative, but not MAGA Republican, and then you take leftist, socialist, Democrat, that's a huge field here. There's a huge field on so many issues. And yet none of it will matter if we do not stay focused and get into office the people that we need to get into office. True Blue is like, couldn't happen to a nicer guy, right? So TH Fannin says, I'm worried about the DNC funding. I am as well. I am as well. And actually, our team is working on a project for that. And I was hoping to have it for you this evening, but with a lot of different news coming up, I'll be honest and say I'm behind. So we're going to be talking about it more next week. But we are launching a project where all of you can get involved. No matter, you don't have to give personally. I know that not everyone's in a position to do that, especially in this economy, but there are different ways that you can get involved. And so we've talked about a little bit that our Political Fixer team started a super PAC in preparation for a couple of different projects, and we are really going to jump up that game in midterms. And the punchline is we're going to invite all of you to join us. We would like for all of you to be a part of sharing the messaging, amplifying what we're doing, helping these different candidates. Right now, what you can see, though the site is not completely built yet, but you can go to Political Fixer PAC, PAC.com or .org, Political Fixer PAC, and you will see that we have selected 50 House races and 12 Senate races. In fact, we changed one of our Senate races after this last Tuesday. If any of you joined us for our Tuesday show last week, we were able to call on the air the fact that Angie Nixon won her Senate primary in Florida. So we now believe that that makes Florida in play. So we're going to work with all of you on how you can do things from social media to training. Now, why am I worried about DNC funding? First of all, funding for any organization like this after you lose and lose badly, which essentially the DNC did in 2024, funding is always lower after big losses like that. Donors are investing in winners. The second thing is all of these divisions that we've been talking about with the Democratic Party, those types of divisions are happening with donors as well. And a lot of them are choosing to put their money in different organizations that they believe reflect their values rather than a DNC that has struggled to say what its values are. Not going to weigh in on my opinions on any of these issues, but let's use the very serious issue of what's happening in the Middle East, what's happening with Iran, what's happening with Israel, what's happening with Gaza. People have very strong feelings about that, and a stronger set of communicators would have worked together to try to bridge some of those divides, set up a criteria of values where everybody feels safe and heard, even if they disagree, and try to bridge those things. But instead, we have factions where people are like, absolutely not. It has to be this, and you have to support this country. No way, I support this country. No way, I support this religion. Well, that means you're anti this religion. The feelings are real. The problems are real. There is a real conflict. I just would say the DNC is not really equipped to handle that level of conflict, right? If you had a similar conflict in a workplace or on, in a group of some sort, then you would try to work it out, right? It's like, hey, we clearly have a problem. Can we come together? Can we get more expertise here? Can we try to lower the temperature? Can we come up with some things like, it's okay to say this and this, but if you say this, it's really hurtful. We really haven't done a good job of that. And so it's driven away a lot of donor participation at the high end with people that are taking big checks and moving them elsewhere. And then also at the low end with grassroots donors, there is a lack of trust right now. The lack of trust is real with grassroots donors, right? So here's what I will say. Oh, all things can be. I just went through the DNC's campaign managed program and I'm very frustrated. I would love to talk to you more about that offline because I would like to know what they're doing right and wrong, because it doesn't need to be today, but if you want to reach out to me at Shauna at politicalfixer.com or just go to politicalfixer.com. The reason I'm asking is because we want to have more trainings that we set up that kind of fill some of those gaps, some of them for midterms and some of them beyond. So would love to get your feedback on that. But here's what I'll give you as a positive news on the funding. While the DNC itself has been struggling with funding, a lot of these campaigns are doing very well. Ossoff has raised tens of millions of dollars. The Texas campaign with Talarico, I think he's at $15 million. You have a lot of people that are doing really well. The campaigns are doing well, and I would highly encourage anyone who can to give to these campaigns when you can. but they're not all getting a lot of media attention. And that's where Political Fixer Pat comes in. We're going to talk more about that, because while it's good for the top 3 or 4 races that the media is talking about, you've got all these congressional races and Senate races that are important. And a lot of people have never heard of these people before, because 80 to 90% of our news coverage is about this administration and that chaos demon. So, T.H. Trina says they sold out of those Paxton pins. What a brilliant idea for a campaign. I don't know if you all saw this, but Tallarico, they had someone come to the Tallarico campaign and basically do a testimony that was a true story, that when they were going through the courthouse one day, and all you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, because I know Jay Robot brought me this story, that basically you go through like a metal detector and somebody put a really expensive pin in the metal detector and Paxton just jacked it. He just took the pin on purpose, and they didn't find out, I think, until they reviewed the tapes. And it was like a really expensive pin. He knew it wasn't his and he just took it. And so, to kind of poke fun at how just grody Paxton is, Tallarico sold campaign pens. I don't remember what they had on them. You guys will be better at telling me what they had on them. But Square Foot Gardening, I'm so glad that you're back from your surgery. $1,000 pen is what Kelly F is letting me know that he took. That's great. But also, like, why? I get that it's $1,000 pen, but that's honestly... oh, I'm James Tallarico and I won't steal your pen. That's what was on the pen. I love that. It was a Mont Blanc, right? Okay, so yeah, here's the deal. There's a lot of negativity out there. Some of it is true and warranted and frustrating, like the minority speaker meeting with Jared Kushner and the DNC infighting and needing money. Some of that is absolutely true. And yet, A, that doesn't mean we have to get distracted. And B, there is still a lot of positivity happening. These campaigns are doing extremely well. And there was actually a new Washington Post story out, which isn't exactly the bastion of progressivism since it's been purchased recently. And that story was talking about how many conservatives in Texas are planning to switch over and vote for Tallarico. I think his spell is breaking. I think that not Tallarico's, but the Orange Clown. I think Orange Clown spell is breaking. I think that people are starting to see him as weaker. And when you're an authoritarian, then being seen as weak and someone laughing at you is not a good thing. So he's losing his power. He's losing on every issue that he campaigned on. The immigration nightmare is just reaching every corner of our nation right now. And people are seeing how ugly and hateful this always was. The economy is struggling. The war in Iran is, I don't even understand are we at a trade war with Canada? Like every day, it's just nonsense that has real life impacts, and yet it's nonsense, right? So I think that this is something that people cannot avoid. They cannot pretend like everything is fine this time, right? So, so the mail-in ballots, voter ID, I don't think you understand what that ruling means, but we can talk about the mail ballots next week. I was actually talking to Professor Liberty Esquire about that today, about what it means and doesn't mean, and there's a lot of misinformation on that, but let's just talk about what we can control for tonight. The first thing is, let's keep going with checking and verifying our voter registration. Make sure you're doing that every week so that if there is a voter purge or a voter ballot rolls purge, that you are current. The second thing is check and see if you are allowed to vote early. If you are allowed to vote early, please do that, and then have a backup plan to vote if something happens. You get a phone call and you have to come into work on a day off, or you get a flat tire, or it's a really bad rainstorm, or whatever the case might be. The third thing that you can do is, if you are requesting your mail ballot, find out what the rules are on turning it back in. I would highly recommend that if you are allowed to drop off your mail ballot, that you do so. I understand what that means for some of you. Some of you are in rural areas. Some of you have transportation issues. States are different on whether or not a neighbor is allowed to drop off that ballot for you. So you need to make sure to check on those kinds of things. But you want to make sure that you find out what the rules are and do what you can. And worst case, make sure you track that ballot, right? Vote early if at all possible. Okay, we're at 34,000 likes. We've been talking a little bit about regulation and self-care and kind of preparing for what's next. If you're just joining us on Political Fixer Live, first of all, welcome. So glad that you're here and that you meet all of our amazing Political Fixer family. We've been talking about how two things can be true. Something can be a problem, but it can be not today's problem. And that the division and the distraction is likely going to get worse. And one of my theories, though I'm not asking you to subscribe to this theory, one of my theories is that today when a United States plane landed in Moscow and the head of our CIA met with the Kremlin, I believe it was basically to negotiate for additional help in the midterms. I am not implying that there is anything nefarious with the machines or the vote tallies or anything like this. I think it is a psychological operation. They are going to try to gin us up and give us a lot of misinformation. And this technology is getting extremely sophisticated. I, back in the day, was a gamer nerd, like old time gamer nerd. I still play games when I have time, which is not often, but I do love them. I am in tech. I understand media. I own a production company. And yet, sometimes I watch a video and I think, is this true? And then I look and it's a fake. It's so good right now. It's not like it was. There's a lot of technology that is meant to upset you. And some of it can be just like, there was a Rachel Maddow video that I saw that turned out to be a fake. But also, I'll be honest, I thought those bunnies really were on that trampoline. I don't know if any of you saw the video with the bunnies on the trampoline. I thought the bunnies were on the trampoline. It was a complete fake, right? So we just don't know. And so I would just say that if you see something that upsets you, the first thing is it's okay to walk away from it for a bit. But the second thing is please verify, verify, verify. It's not an indication on you at all. At all. There's an entire bunch of tech and information and nefarious actors that are there, and we're tired. We're tired. We're seeing stuff, and we're not people that are taught to question everything. We shouldn't be on edge all the time. So this is not at all to be an insult to your intelligence or your prowess or your technological savvy. Nothing like that. Just take a beat and just let's be. Marlene said, I saw the bunnies, right? And All Things is reminding us that as of now, the United States Postal Service does have to deliver your ballots. But also, like, I just want to say, all of this is very sloppy. If this is the play, let's just go with it. Let's just say this is the play, and let's decide that the Supreme Court is going to screw us over again, and they're going to just do whatever they feel regardless of the law. Let's say that all of those things are true. It's not true yet, but let's say it's true. We have 2 months. We have 2 months to deal with this. It's not even September yet. If you were going to pull this stuff, it's called October Surprise for a reason. It's called October Surprise for a reason because you wait. You hold and keep your powder dry. They are tipping their hand early. And if this is what they're going to do, if this is the card they're going to play, think about how much time we have to respond, how much time we have to organize, how much time we have to help our neighbors and our friends make their plans to vote and let them know what's going on. It's sloppy, guys. They're getting worse at this. He is slowing down in every possible way. I am not saying we don't have a huge road in front of us. I'm not saying it's going to be easy. Quite the opposite. That's why I was so thankful to have this time with you all this evening. I just want us to make sure that we understand that right now, even though we had a hard day today, by all metrics, by every metric, their behavior, what we're seeing in the polls, the enthusiasm we're all seeing in the ground, what we're seeing with his approval ratings, and even the prediction markets, every single measurable, we are winning right now. We just have to hold on for a little bit longer. And no, I don't think that everything's going to be magically better. I don't think that every Democrat is going to magically be good at their job, but we'll have help. We'll be able to at least slow it down. We'll be able, through some chicanery and circus art, be able to start putting out these fires. Okay, let's end on a note of tribute. I would like to talk a little bit about Dolly Parton in our last few minutes together. And thank you to all of you who joined us on Political Fixer Live this evening. I know it was a little bit of a different show, but I felt like we needed to go more into discussion this evening instead of just headline, headline, headline because of everything going on, right? And I'm so glad, Counselor Catmom, that you found this helpful this evening. For those of you just joining us, welcome to Political Fixer Live. We're at already 38,000 likes. And if you are new here, first of all, welcome. So glad you're here. But also, we got notified from TikTok again that we are one of the top lives in the nation, and we're the top live in our category in the nation. So that's amazing. And that's because of all of you. And so while I might lead this little discussion, it's because of all of you that it makes it a really great space for us to get together. So really excited about that. So we got some tough news today. At least it was tough news for me. The just iconic Dolly Parton passed away today. And for me, that felt extremely sudden. She was only 80 years old. And we learned right before I came on the air that doctors have said she did have cancer. She had kept it private, and that the bout was short, is what they said, but that she was dealing with some health issues. I also know that it was extremely difficult for her when her husband passed. That was extremely difficult for her. Um, there's something about losing someone like that that hits you in a different way. And I don't know if Kelly F is still on or not, but I know we were talking about some things, and I saw Marlene earlier. We were chit-chatting some things. Some of you sent me some messages, right? Um, like, why does something like this hit us so hard, right? And I think one of the things is that right now, with so many things at the very least being problematic and sometimes just being so gross, right? Even things that we enjoy become tainted really easily right now. And I mean, like, literally tainted, like our food, like having a nice fresh berry something this summer we couldn't do, right? And some of it, like, emotionally tainted. I love watching sports for the most part, and watching the WNBA and what's been happening with the treatment of these women and the harassment that's happening there, and the nastiness with people using this as a platform to be hateful to our transgender friends. It's like, even when you're trying to relax, there's something there. There's just kind of a cloud always. And so when we can look at something that's just light and it's just good, and it's someone that reminds us of the better parts of who we are and who I would like to think we could become again as a nation, or become for the first time, depending on your opinion there. It's really hard. It feels like there's so few precious things that are just great. They're just great. And she was that. There's the things that people knew about, like her being so generous with her artistry. She wasn't just an iconic woman who came from just abject poverty. Just, I think she was one of 9 children. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. And lived in a little box house. And then to go from that to a superstar and not forget who she was, and to own and love and embrace that culture of working class rather than feel like she was too good for it. That was a huge part of what she was. She also never lifted the ladder up behind her. I don't remember if any of you are old enough to remember when Whitney Houston re-recorded I Will Always Love You. I Will Always Love You was a Dolly Parton song, and she wrote it the same night she wrote Jolene, actually. Just an iconic woman. I Will Always Love You, Whitney Houston recorded it. 11 siblings, thank you. And Whitney Houston's success just went off the charts. And so people kept asking Dolly Parton, like, well, does this bother you? Does this bother you? Partly because of the cattiness, but partly because we know why, right? Because there's certain people that are like, yeah, but she sang your song, right? We know what they were really saying. And she was always so gracious and so kind about just, not just I'm okay with it, but heaping praise on Whitney Houston and anyone else who covered her songs, right? She just was constantly trying to nurture and mentor other artists instead of the backbiting that is so common in so many industries, but especially in the entertainment industry. She donated over 332 million books to children. Without question, they would just send these books to children. Now it starts for many children when they're born. They get, I think, a book a month until they reach a certain age. And it's just free to encourage literacy, because illiteracy has been such a difficult problem, particularly in certain communities. And so the book program started out as something simple, and now over 332 million books have been given to these children. She notoriously paid for medical procedures of people in her theme parks that worked for her, or people that needed help with something. She was constantly stepping in and paying for the full college education for people that worked in her theme parks or were part of her envoy. She quietly but diligently donated a significant amount of money. In fact, the rumor is she had a separate, so she wrote the song I Will Always Love You. So when Whitney Houston charted with I Will Always Love You, any of that radio play, Dolly Parton still made money. And what people are saying, and it's been verified by a couple of different sources, that this account existed, is she took those royalties and specifically invested it in small high school bands, paying for their equipment, paying for their uniforms, particularly in Black communities. She was consistently reaching out into Black communities and making sure that they had an opportunity for music education. She had a fender bender with someone in Tennessee, and she went and saw a doctor. There's a really great podcast. I'll have to post it later. I don't remember the name of it. Maybe Jay Robot can remind me of the name of it. About a son whose father was the doctor who treated Dolly when she had that fender bender. And then they get to talking, and she learns about this research project that's happening. And long story short, she ends up being the single largest donor into the research that became one of our COVID vaccines, saving arguably millions of lives. This is a woman who was kind to everyone. She got offered the ability to be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and she turned it down because she said she didn't feel like she had earned that yet, that she wasn't a rock and roll artist, but she would try. And so she said she would try to make them proud and earn that nomination. So she had them hold that induction, and she recorded an entire collaborative rock and roll album a couple of years ago so that she could deserve the praise and the accolades of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And of course, she didn't do it alone. She used it as an opportunity to elevate so many other artists in the process, right? She helped with funds to an African-American neighborhood in Nashville. Yes, that's correct. She helped with disaster relief consistently. And we're now learning of all of these quiet stories. Right before I came on the air, someone posted a story that said that they had a dear friend who is trans and was transitioning in part inspired by Dolly Parton and her beauty, and just basically just adored Dolly Parton, and that was part of her inspiration for coming out as trans and wanting to move forward in life with her true self. And not only did Dolly Parton send a personal letter back to her friend encouraging her to find her truth and become who she knew she wanted to be, but she also paid for the surgery. Never heard of that. Never heard that on the news. She didn't do a press conference. And imagine how much someone may have had different feelings about that. She didn't care. She just knew to be kind to people and to do the right thing. And you're right, Edna. She never forgot where she came from. And, you know, this is someone who just had a light in her that guided her through a lot of tough times. I've read about how she doubted herself when people in the 90s, like really big in the 80s, really big in the last 20 years, we forget there was a period of time where she kind of wasn't anywhere. And it's because people were just mean to her and mocking her and telling her she was washed up and telling her that the blonde hair and the fake boobs were over and making her a joke, and really just closing, you know, Hollywood and Nashville both kind of closed their doors on her. And then she just kept fighting and kept deciding she wasn't done yet, and kept giving back to her community this entire time while she was down and out. And she made a huge second wave comeback that was so big, we forget she ever had a quiet time at all. So this is something that I, care about deeply. I've been to Dollywood now twice. This was a dream of mine, and I got to go 2 times. If you ever get a chance to go, if you love live music, there's like 12 different stages. It is immaculately clean. It is well tended to. The staff are treated amazing. And if you ever want to feel good about a theme park, I highly recommend Dollywood for anybody of any age, whether you love all the rides or you never ride anything. It is a great thing to go. And there are all of these displays with stuff about her life and her music and her charity work. And there's so many ways that you can get involved now and donate to her imagination library, or just watch her movies, share her stories, share what she meant to you. Some of you, as we get ready to end this night, I would love to hear from you, like what your favorite song or movie or moment about Dolly Parton is, just because I'd love to hear that from you. And then while you're putting that into the chat, then I would also wanted to share with you that you might notice like a little bit of a rearrangement in our set. We're still building things out. There's going to be more things. We moved the Karen Hallion poster because some of you were saying that you liked it, but you had trouble seeing behind my Charlie Brown head. Those are my words, not yours. My big heat was in the way, so we moved that so more people could appreciate Karen Hallion's artwork. We're going to be adding more things to the wall and other different things. Straight Talk, 9 to 5, Jolene. I love Turnstile Magnolias is what All Things said. Yes, and so to take the place for some artwork for this evening, we have a new edition, and we have some Dolly Parton artwork right behind me that we just added to the studio tonight. It says, "Life is short, bloom bright," and it has Dolly Parton's signature right there. So we added some Dolly Parton with us, joining us every Tuesday for our lives now. She'll be in our Equal Rights Now studio. I see DK got to see her in concert. Lisa Ann is saying 9 to 5 was your favorite. Islands in the Stream is J Robot's favorite. Jeannie Virginia is saying, I love everything, Dolly. She doesn't want to make a choice. That's fair. Great sense of humor. That is so true. And you have to be so smart to be really funny. I will always love you is what Kathy is saying. Ms. Zentris, I will always remember her standing up for herself while being harassed in 9 to 5. Yes, 100%. Jolene and Islands in the Stream. ILS also loves 9 to 5. Love Turnstile Magnolias. I see that. Curious One said Jolene. Coat of Many Colors from Mom. That's a great one. Cynthia Fontaine, you also saw her in concert in 2009. All Things said she talked about as long as she keeps trying, she didn't fail. Jonah Wild says, I loved her ability to laugh at herself. Counselor Cat Mom said, I loved watching her late night interviews with David Letterman and Jimmy Fallon. And All Things said, I also love when she shared her thoughts on failing. And now Squarefoot Guardian is saying that we're hearing some of the new stories behind those songs. Curious One loves Coat of Many Colors. Carrie says there's a special on ABC right now. So definitely you guys should check that out. I think there's also a Netflix special for her. And listen, here's the thing. It's always hard to lose something so beautiful. And also it feels like for me, like, I can't remember a time that she wasn't an inspiration for me. Literally, I just did a TikTok on a couple of memories that I had involving that. And she was just such a light and so sassy. And, when you grow up in certain ways, you're taught what women should be and should not be. And unfortunately, a lot of that hasn't gone away. It's just changed its flavor a little bit. But for someone who was so unapologetically herself, and so fiercely kind, and also showing us that kindness does not mean compromising your values or allowing people to be mean to others. She had a way of being kind, but firm in the fact that it was never okay to be unkind to people around her. And I think she was way ahead of her time in so many different ways, right? And yes, Ms. Interest, it is quite the contrast in what we're kind of used to with not just our political discourse, but all media right now, right? If you haven't had a chance to check out the Cowboy Carter album, I talk about that a little bit in my TikTok, but she not only worked with Beyonce very closely on this album on a particular tracks, but she also helped to co-write I think 2 additional tracks in addition to the newer version of Jolene. So there's something more modern. And then obviously we're going to be getting into holiday times. And so, I just love a lot of her holiday music as well. I know there's going to be so many ways that we get to carry on, not just her music, but her memory. But here's what I'm hoping that you all take away from this evening. We're all experiencing a lot of loss right now. Literally, in the case of losing someone like Dolly Parton and so many others, but also emotionally, we've been experiencing a lot of loss. We will never get this time back. We will never get back the areas of peace that we used to have, and some of us may have taken for granted. So many of us are losing things literally right now: businesses, jobs, financial security, loved ones, access to things, opportunities, and so much worse for some of our other friends that are just being targeted right now. We're not dealing with a lot of that grief because the activities keep happening. So when we do take a moment to feel anything, it can feel really heavy. But what I'll say is that this too shall pass. Grief is not linear. It might also stir up some old feelings about other things that you might have been grieving for in the past, and that's okay. We're here for each other, and no matter where you are, what you believe, what you do, where you might be living, or who's sitting next to you, or whether or not you're sitting there alone right now, you're not alone. We're here. There's so many amazing people. She was among the best, I'll give you that one. But there's some pretty cool, awesome people that you're going to get to meet and connect with, especially over the next several weeks as we help each other through this very surreal time. Hard to catch your breath sometimes, but I'm always grateful for the time that we have to catch our breaths together and just kind of make sure we all see the giant rabbit in the room. We're just all in this together. That helps me as well. You're so welcome. You're so welcome. Miss Centrist has some great suggestions about spending time in nature. I love that as a theory girl. That is not my cup of tea, but I celebrate you for doing it. I am more like spend some time with a martini, but I celebrate your call to nature. I really do. And that's what we call Big Tent Party, right? That's exactly it. Love you guys so much as well, right? All right. I want to wish you all a good night. But before I do, you guys know what I'm going to say, particularly on a night like tonight after the week that we've all had. And I know some of you have been sharing some things with me privately and in the chat. So I just want to thank you for sharing and let you know that I am thinking about you and I am seeing you. You are so much in my thoughts and prayers. So I want you to hopefully let's get together again next Tuesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern. We have some fun things, hopefully a little bit lighter that we can talk about. And in the meantime, I need you to please take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and do what you can to take care of this precious country of ours. I love you guys. Please be good to each other, but more importantly, be good to yourselves, especially right now. 51,000 likes on a night like tonight. I will take it. I will take it with love because today was hard. Today was very hard. Thank you so much, everybody. So good to see you. Good night, Edna. Good night, Cynthia. Good night, Square Foot Gardening. Touch grass. All right, I accept your challenge, Miss Centrist. I accept it. Susie B1, call the A-team. Love it. Best to you always as well. Bye, ILS. Good night, all things. Good night, Alive 5. Good to see you. Bye, everybody. Bye, Minnesota Mom. I didn't see you earlier. So good that you were here. Good night, everybody. Oh, hi, Lisa Ann.